Shalom, Israel. Shalom, shalom. So, I'm driving to work, and I was just praying, talking to the Father, listening to what He's saying, thinking about this coming Sabbath day and some possible topics of what I might talk about. And then the Father gave me this analogy that I really want to share right now. So I'll have to figure something out for something else for Sabbath day. He'll give me something else. But I feel like this analogy He gave me it's pretty. I think it could be very helpful. So, growing up, we have video games too, but that was the beginning stages, so they were more simple. But I remember one of the games that I loved playing, and it was very popular, was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. So with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, with that video game, the object was you became a professional boxer and to go up the ranks and to finally fight Mike at the end, and he was very difficult to beat, but it's a game, so you're going to learn to beat it. And the whole, the premise of the game, or the foundation of the game, or the strategy of the game, was you went and you learned just trial by error, because you just had to play it. They showed you a little graphic of him, your guy training, but you didn't train. You just, first thing you know is you turned professional, and you got this first bout against Glass Joe. But every fighter, from Glass Joe to the second guy, was a little bit harder, but still pretty easy. I mean, Glass Joe was super easy. You didn't have to have played. You did not know how to play the game for real to beat Glass Joe. He was really, really easy. It's like cream puff, just not hard. But from Glass Joe to the second guy, the third guy, all the way up the line to Mike Tyson, and the guy before Mike Tyson was pretty difficult too. I don't remember all their names, but they all fought in a pattern. They all did the same. They did they had their own pattern, but it was a pattern nonetheless. So once you learn their pattern, you learned when to move, when to block, when to take your opportunity to strike. And I was thinking about in Ephesians, when it talks about the armor and standing against the wiles of the enemy, and I was like, I was just thinking in boxing terms, as a boxing analogy. In real life, I know that boxers they train. That's the main ingredient of being a boxer, is your training. Learning how to punch, block, parry, move, your conditioning. And then when they start to fight, they have a match. Maybe in the beginning, there may not be a whole lot of study of their opponent or looking into their opponent, but as you climb the ranks, you have to look at your opponent and find out. They're not going to fight in patterns, obviously, but what they will show you is maybe some weaknesses, some strengths, weaknesses you can capitalize on, strengths that that you can try to avoid, something they do very well. And that's what this walk is like. But we learn by listening to the Father, but also in some of the experiences that we have. A quote that I heard from a movie that I love, which was Matrix Revolution, Reloaded, the second one, when Neo meets Sarah for the first time. He walks into that, what looked like a Chinese dojo or restaurant or something. He's sitting there sipping tea or whatever, and Neo tells him, he says, I'm here, here to see the Oracle. And Seraph's like, I can take you to her, but first I gotta apologize for this. And they start fighting. It's a good fight scene. Excuse me. Excuse me, wrong tube. So, after they're done fighting, as quickly as Seraph starts the fight, just after a couple of minutes of fighting, and he gets hit a couple times by Neo. After a couple minutes of fighting, he stops it just as abruptly. And he says, okay, good. I just had to be sure. And Neo says, sure about what? And he says that you were the one. And Neo says, well, you could have just asked me. Because by that time, Neil's he's claiming it. Like in the first one, he was like, I'm not the one. He was saying it all movie, I'm not the one. Because that's just what the Oracle told him. That's another good quote from the first one, but I'm not gonna get on that bunny trail. So he says, no, Seraph, he says to Seraph, well, you could have just asked me. And Seraph says, no, you do not truly know a person until you fight them. Because when you get in a fight with someone, that's when you find out what they're about, or who they, a part of their personality that is not readily seen. But it's also a way of finding out what's in you. So thinking about this boxing analogy and how we are training, the reading and the praying and the things that we do, but we have these little fights every day. We have choices that we have to make, and sometimes those choices can be a little bit difficult, between choosing righteousness and unrighteousness, between choosing what the Most High would have us do and what our flesh would have us do. And that's what our enemy works through. The enemy works through our flesh. So it's what are we going to do? Are we going to do what the Most High says? Are we going to do what he wants us to do? Or are we going to do what the enemy wants us to do, using our flesh? And some bouts, especially in the beginning, they might be some easy victories. But as you grow and learn, those fights and those battles will get a little tougher. And some of those fights you might lose. Just like in the game, you lose because there's nobody that just, from the very first time they played it, ran all the way to the end and just beat Tyson. You had to play that game over and over and over and over again. And you learn the pattern of the fighter, but you have to start back at Flash Joe. Easy, boom bop. Second guy, easy, boom bop. Third guy, might take a, I think, I don't remember. First 3, 4, 5 guys, I think he was able to TKO in the first round. It just started taking a little bit longer to get there. And then one, after a while, they got hard enough where you had to go into the second round, third round, or whatever. So in life, though, when in these fights and these battles, in the beginning, there might be some Glass Joes, some easy battles, and you think, yeah, this is cool. This walk ain't that bad. I've said it. I think I said that on a recording in a video, that it's not that hard. And sometimes it's not. Some of these battles are not that hard. But then some other battles will come that will be a little difficult. That'll be a little harder. And you might fail. And that's when you find out what's really in you. Are you a quitter or are you a fighter? Fight or flight, that whole thing. But that fight or flight speaks to whether you don't even fight at all. You just run from the jump. But we cannot run from the enemy. The scriptures say that we have what the Most High gave us, this armor that the Most High gave us, so that we could stand against him, not run from him. So there might be some battles, right now they're easy. Some that come back around that maybe a year ago, they weren't so easy, but now a year later, they're not hard. But there's also battles that are going to be here that are going to come to you that they're going to be a little bit more difficult. Some so much so that you might choose wrong. You might fail. And that's why the scripture says, a righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets up. And the wicked, they stumble. That's only the first half of that verse. I'll have to find it. I didn't find it. I don't know it off the top. I don't know it from memory. I know what it says, but I know it's in Proverbs, but I can't remember exactly the location. So what I'm saying is, be encouraged that if you're fighting and you're having some battles, that's a good sign. You're in a fight. But then also recognize or pay attention to what's in you. And then pay attention to, what the enemy does, what he uses to try to fight against you. Is it anger? Is it lust? Is it greed? Is it gluttony? Is it, I'm not trying to name the 7 deadly sins. That's what it sounds like, but those are all things that are going to be used against you, in temptation to try to get you to fall. So, is it backbiting, spreading rumors? I mean, there's all kinds of things that he will use, especially when it comes to pride. Pride can get wrapped up in all kinds of things. So, be encouraged. If you're having some fights, some battles, you should be. We all should be from time to time. Now, we're going to have some times of peace as well, just like Israel. There were times of war and there were times of peace. The scripture says there's a time for everything under the sun. There's a time for everything. But when that time for battle comes, still recognize what's in you. And then what is the enemy using? If you got to talk to yourself using some scripture, encouraging yourself, David did. He said he encouraged himself in the Most High. We have to do that. I do it. There are times I'm talking to myself, especially when I'm tempted. Especially, no, I'm not doing that. The Most High won't like that. Or I'm talking directly to him. Father, I know you won't. That's not what you're trying to have me do. Help me, please, get through this thing. Because temptations can sometimes be very strong. But there was something I was told years ago that really helped me. And it's true. It's a truth. And that is, there is no sin in temptation. There's no sin in temptation. Just because you're being tempted does not mean you have sinned. Why? Well, what is sin? Sin is breaking the Most High's law. Being tempted to break the Most High's law is not the same as breaking the Most High's law. So there is no sin in temptation. But what's your response to that temptation? That's the fight. When you're being tempted, that's the fight. What are you going to do? I want to encourage you to fight. And fighting looks all kinds of different ways. But mainly, fighting looks like running to the Most High, rather it be through his word. You just pick up his word and start reading it. You go find the verse. Whether it be you pray. Praying is another way of fighting. Whether it be you talk to him and admit what's going on. Praying is a way of fighting. How are you going to fight? Are you going to fight? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? That's what I ask myself. Who am I really? What am I into really? So I wanted to share that. I wanted to share that, life is a series of battles and fights, and the enemy, he will use some of the same tactics. He might disguise it a little bit differently, but learn to recognize his tactics so they stand out. And just like on that game, you learn the patterns, you learn how to dodge and duck and not get hit. And some of these fights become real easy. So I'm at work. Israel, be blessed. Have a wonderful day. Shalom.